And with that, speaking of alternate sources of funding, our program today is with Instrumentl, which is an online platform that is a mission-driven startup helping the nonprofit sector to drive impact. Here at NHRC, we've used Instrumentl and we've been really impressed with the tools available and the ease with which funding searches can be done. And our panelists today are Katie Castillo, account executive at Instrumentl, and they have the most interesting bios there. So I have to tell you what Katie's bio says is that she is the most likely to bake you custom sugar cookies. And then she'll be followed by Rachel Fiddler-Canella, who is the events and community manager, and she is most likely to be camping in the backcountry. And so with that, I want to hand it over.
Thank you so much, Ellie. I'm going to get our slides popped up here. We are so glad to be with you all today. I'm going to pass it over to Katie to get us rolling, and we'll share some really, I think, fun and engaging content for you all to enjoy this morning.
Amazing. Hi, everyone. Huge thank you to Ebony and Ellie for working with us in the National Housing Resource Center for the warm welcome. And huge thank you to each of you for being here. I know that you've got a lot on your agenda every single day, and you're doing transformative work in every pocket of the United States to help families obtain and sustain and retain their homes. So we're grateful to be here with you today. When we met with Ebony and Ellie, a big topic we discussed was how the NHRC was looking for ways to help its members diversify their revenue sources, especially in light of so much federal funding uncertainty. And that challenge is the big why behind Instrumentl. It's why we exist. We exist to help organizations like you all unlock new funding streams by connecting you with new funders, helping you win proposals faster, draft your proposals faster, leveraging AI, and manage your grants calendar, which hopefully continues to grow with a tool like Instrumentl all in one place. Quick intro to who I am. My name is Katie. I am based up in Duluth, Minnesota. I have been with Instrumentl for over a year and a half now. I've helped it's probably 800 or so nonprofits, universities, hospitals, governments to evaluate Instrumentl as an advisor to help you find funders more efficiently and simplify grant tracking and management. I do love to make custom cookies. It was my pandemic hobby. Right now, I only have time to do it really for my children and my nieces and nephews on their birthdays, but it's a creative outlet that I really enjoy. Our roadmap for today is going to include just a brief introduction to Instrumentl for folks who aren't able to stay for the full time. We are going to do a live demonstration a little bit later. And everyone here is going to leave, if you'd like, you have a 3-week free trial of Instrumentl. So Rachel will drop that link for you as we go through here. After I do a brief introduction to Instrumentl, Rachel's gonna take over and walk through how to find good fit funders quickly with Instrumentl or without it. So you're gonna leave with some tangible takeaways, whether you're using a grant-seeking tool like Instrumentl or just using the resources that you have. From there, we'll go into a live demonstration and then a Q&A. So we'll go ahead and do a quick sneak peek to Instrumentl. So a lot of people come to Instrumentl, right, because they're spending hours and hours and hours manually looking for new funding sources for grants. They're digging through 990s to identify funders whose priorities really closely match their organization's mission. Instrumentl is really good at helping organizations do this quickly. Our mission is to be a force multiplier for nonprofits, so helping your organizations win more funding and move your mission forward. But beyond connecting you with good fit funders, Instrumentl is an end-to-end grant management solution. So it's going to encompass all aspects of the grant life cycle. Go ahead to the next slide. So, like I said, Instrumentl is an end-to-end grant management solution. I'm going to do a quick overview of how we do this, how we support organizations from grant discovery through funder cultivation, through actually applying for those grants faster, and then having a centralized space to track and manage your grants all in one place. And then we'll pass it off to Rachel. So go ahead to the next slide. We're going to dig through each part of these. We are trusted by over 4,500 nonprofits to find and win more funding. And on average, organizations are winning about 40% more in grant revenue within 12 months. So there's an extremely strong ROI. Most people start here. They start with grant discovery, right? They're looking for new grant opportunities. Go ahead and click the next slide here. So the intelligent matching algorithm within Instrumentl, you can set up saved searches for different funding priorities, and we're going to match you with two different lists. The first list is our active RFP database. This is the largest database of open and active grants. We have almost 24,000 active RFPs, and we add every single week. We have a team of 25 grant builders that are building opportunities for our customers. The next list that we match you with is our funder directory. So we have over 400,000 funder profiles, and based on their past giving, we are going to match you with funders who may not have an open grant right now, but do have a history of giving to your areas and in your region. Really great prospects to build relationships with, to work your network. So two different strategies, right? Applying for open grants and then building those relationships. We give you access to both of them. Go ahead to the next slide, Rachel. The next piece of this is cultivating those funder relationships. For every funder profile that we have on Instrumentl, it comes with really powerful insights around a funder's past giving. So we analyze the 990s for you, where are these funders giving regionally? What types of organizations are they supporting? How open are they to new grantees? Are they just focusing on relationships that they've built and they've cultivated, or are they open to giving to new organizations? The other thing that we're going to show you, go ahead and click to the next slide, is some really deep insights into your peers. So you can look up peer organizations and see who their top funders are, and analyze, are these funders who have open opportunities, or do they have a strong alignment, right, based on the fact that they're giving to an organization that's doing similar work or missional work to us. So we'll walk through how to do that during the demo as well. The next piece of this puzzle, right? So we're going to connect you with good fit grants and funders, and then we're going to help you apply for your applications a lot faster. So a lot of folks, when you're drafting applications, you bring in the questions, right, you bring in your application questions from the funder's website into a separate document. You're looking at past proposals that you've submitted, and you are copying and pasting, right? Or looking at, how did I answer the mission statement? How did I answer our impact on the community? What Instrumentl is going to do is we're going to bring in those applications for private grant proposals into the portal for you. So go ahead and click a couple times there, Rachel. So we have an AI grant writing tool. After you upload your past proposals into Instrumentl, we're going to automatically surface how you answered similar questions on those previous proposals with our in-app application forms. And you can choose which past proposals you want to use as the source material. So most organizations who are using this today, just to give you kind of time savings, it's about 3 hours per application that they're saving, and they're doubling the number of grants that they get out every single month. So really powerful tool here. For every grant that you find in Instrumentl or find outside of Instrumentl, you can bring all of those grants into one centralized hub. You can think about it as like a grants headquarters. To track your proposals. So tracking the stages of those grants and making sure that your team is aligned, right? Are we meeting our deadlines? Are we handling our action items or our reports that are due for our grants? So it's one centralized place to streamline your grants, from prospecting all the way through post-award. And when we get to grants that have been awarded, right? There's a whole series of responsibilities and deliverables that we are responsible for. So Instrumentl is there to support you through post-award with reporting. You have a clear view of all of grants that you've been awarded and any activities or deliverables that are that you're responsible for kind of across your team. So we help with spend down tracking. You can manage your grant budgets within Instrumentl. And then you can also manage the post-award collaboration. So that's a big picture. I just wanted to make sure if folks have to drop before we jump into the demo, just wanted to give you a kind of an insight into how Instrumentl is supporting throughout the entire grant lifecycle. Prospecting is our bread and butter, and that's where we're going to really focus in the demo as well. But I want to make sure you all understand kind of the what's at your disposal when it comes to Instrumentl. So I'll pass it over to Rachel. She's going to take us through a workshop, and I'll be back on a little bit later.
I'm going to jump in and ask a quick question. Are the grants for nonprofit organizations only, or do they have some for local or county government?
Sorry, I was unmuting myself. So we do have grants for governments as well. It's not, our database is built primarily for nonprofits, but we do have government entities that are using Instrumentl. So you will see those. And I would definitely encourage you to give the trial a go and see what pops up there for you.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Katie will be able to show actually how those, how you can kind of delineate those searches as well within Instrumentl. So some questions might be answered there too. Awesome. All right, folks. Welcome. A portion of this program, we're talking about Instrumentl, but we also want to level up on our skill sets in prospecting and how we find grants. So our goal today is also to really leave you with feeling empowered about how you can approach grant seeking in your organization. I'm going to give you some really practical tips on prospecting, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how some of those are applicable to the way the Instrumentl platform is designed, right? So a lot of this is going to lead into your grant seeking work, whether you use Instrumentl or not. That's the intention here. And as a quick intro to who I am, my name is Rachel. I work with Katie at Instrumentl, and I'm the events and community manager. So I'm responsible for our educational programming. We host weekly webinars with grant seeking experts. So would love to see any of the folks who are in this room for some of our programming as well. You are welcome to drop in on our free webinars anytime. I actually come from the nonprofit sector as well. I specifically come from the arts and culture sector. I was working in museums prior to joining Instrumentl almost a year and a half ago as well. So I love talking with nonprofits, and I really feel the pain points. Both Katie and I can reflect a lot on our lived experiences with grant seeking in kind of previous roles. So we try and bring that lens to this programming as well. As I mentioned, this is going to be an educational workshop portion with a quick demo and Q&A. If you have questions, I want to make this workshop as applicable to you all as possible. So please leave questions for Katie and I in the chat box. I'll try and answer as we go. And if there are things that are nuances for you all in your specific work, please add that to the chat box. You'll also get the recording and slides, as Ebony mentioned. And we love to always say, honor your personal needs. You're taking a lot of time out of your day to do a million things. I'm sure many of you are wearing many hats. So please bring a snack, get that water with you, and stay hydrated. We want to make sure we're honoring our personal needs during our learning today. But I hope you'll stick it out to the end of our presentation. I will be offering this little freebie that we'll be sending to folks who fill out our feedback form. I will be dropping that in the chat at the end of our portion of the presentation. And if you fill out the feedback, you'll get the guide, and you'll also be entered into a raffle to win some coffees for your office on us. So anyone who fills out that feedback form at the end, you'll be entered automatically into our raffle. I'm hoping you'll leave this workshop with a few key things today. As I mentioned, I want us to level up our skills in prospecting. We're going to be able to decide, hopefully, if a funder is right for you in under 3 minutes. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. You're also going to get access to some of your best funding options. Katie had mentioned that our database includes over 24,000 active public and private 501c3 funding opportunities. You're going to get kind of special access to that today with that link that I dropped into the chat box, and I'll be following up with that link as we go through the program. And lastly, I would love for everyone to walk away with this tailor-made list of good fit funders. We have this matching algorithm algorithm in Instrumentl that will match you with your funders that are best fits and the grant opportunities that they're providing. I want you to go to your boss, to your board today and be able to say, hey, I just found 10 new funders that I think would be a good fit. So that's my goal for us all today, is to walk away with these things. Katie referenced on some of where we're headed today, but just to outline kind of the educational portion here, we're going to start by exploring the power of grants, which I'm sure many of you are already familiar with. I'll quickly cover what makes grants so valuable and why you may want to incorporate a grant strategy for your organization in the long run when we're talking about diversification of funding. We'll also cover prospect research, what that means, and some best practices for your organization. We'll look at how you can evaluate prospective funders and make sure you're spending time on funders and opportunities that are actually relevant to your organization. And lastly, I'm going to walk through that kind of finding good fit funders piece on the actual search process. Katie's going to do a demo, and she's going to be able to show us the parameters that we want to keep in mind if we're using Instrumentl or not, when we're looking for best fit funding. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the power of grants. And actually, before I even get to that, I'd love to hear in the chat box, if you can drop in a number from 1 to 3, 1 being, and I'm talking about our expertise with grants. So 1 being, I have little expertise with grants. I haven't written that many. I haven't submitted that many. To 3, which is, I know my stuff. I'm really great at grants. 2 is maybe somewhere in between, right? Love this. Thanks. Okay, great. I'm seeing a lot of 1s, a couple 3s, Laura and Melissa, rock stars, some experts in the room. Great. Lisa and Tony. Yep. Sam and Kay are saying 2. Tanisha also 2. Okay. So a couple middle of the road, a couple folks who feel really primed, and a couple folks who maybe need more support. This is great. We've got the whole gamut here. And I'll invite some of the experts in the room to add thoughts as we go through this program. Chime in on maybe some lived experience that you have. If folks have questions, let's use this as a community of practice and learning so that we can learn from each other. And I think that everyone will walk away finding something valuable with the content I'm sharing here. Well, you're already here in this room, so you probably already have an idea of the answer to this question. Are grants worth all the effort? For starters, grants are a lot of work. The folks who are the 3s in this room know that it's not so easy to just go for a grant, right? It might be a full-time job for 1 or several people on your team, or if you're a smaller organization, grants might take up a big chunk of time for someone who has a lot else going on. But we believe the answer is yes. Katie mentioned some of these metrics here, but there are over 87,000 grant-making foundations in the United States and 24,000 active grants on Instrumentl alone. So although it is going to be a long and sometimes complex process, there are definitely ways to win here. One thing I want to highlight about why grants are so powerful, as a general rule, private foundations should be making these charitable payouts in either grants or qualifying operating expenses that total at least 5% of their total assets annually to remain in compliance with federal and state tax codes. So a bulk of those distributions are going to end up going to grants. This is called the minimum distribution rule. So there are funds out there. At the end of the day, these grant makers are required to be giving. So it's going to be about narrowing down this search process, or maybe some trial and error with figuring out which funders are going to be the right fit to find those foundations that are going to work best with your mission. And let me just show you really briefly what I mean by this 5% rule. If you take a look at a funder, this is the New York Community Trust. I'm using the foundation directory in Instrumentl. We can see that their total assets as of the IRS filing in 2022, this is from a kind of earlier screenshot, totals to almost $3 billion. You can also find this information in the Form 990s on GuideStar, available online. If you're a frequent grant seeker, I'm sure you're familiar with digging through these dense 990 forms. If this foundation is following that minimum distribution rule and they're making that charitable payout of 5% of their assets, that means that this foundation alone should be distributing almost $147 million of funding annually. So if you add up all these other private foundations in the country, that's a lot of dollars that are going towards grants. Another reason that I want to just highlight why grants are so powerful and worth our time, many foundations are going to be consistent in giving. One thing we see in Instrumentl, and Katie referenced this as a metric that we provide to folks who are using the database, we're going to be able to see over multiple year horizons who is funding repeat grantees. So when we talk to development managers and folks that are working in grants, something we often hear is that they're trying to hold these grants year after year. So they've almost set up this recurring stream of revenue funding because of their consistency of grants. So if you can establish this as a viable channel, you can then work that into your budget and set up a plan to grow. And we notice that when foundations are generally, establishing these relationships, they love to continue being a source of support. Which goes to my next point, and something else I really love about grants is that they can be systemized. So there are going to be some really clear steps that you're going to need to take in order to submit grants. We're going to go over a few of those things you can do in some of those first steps today. But where I'm going with this idea is that once you've done a few grants, we can see what it took to get there, create a process, and then better manage our time and set goals. Maybe we even bring other support in to help us writing those grants or sourcing funding opportunities. This may take a while on the setup and getting to that place of stability, but once you get the ball rolling, that can build a system that smoothly and kind of efficiently sustains itself, which goes into my final point. Grants really help keep organizations accountable. In some ways, they're even more powerful than other sources of funding, like individual donors, because you're bound to this immediate feedback loop with funders that you're doing the things you're actually driving the impact for. Because you have to report results, there's a built-in need to be collecting and analyzing results. It's just a powerful tool for identifying strengths as well as areas of improvement in your organization and programmatically, operationally, all that jazz. So my guess is that since you're here, you already kind of get that grants are going to be powerful. So, I want to just highlight again, these are some of the reasons that we see it's worth the time, worth the effort. And I know that folks who put in the time to set these systems up see returns on that and are kind of out of that survival mode that we get into with grant seeking. On that note, I want to talk a little bit about prospect research, right? This is a broad term in the world of nonprofit fundraising, but in the context of grants, we're going to define this specifically as the process of finding, assessing, and qualifying those public, private, and corporate foundations to pursue more strategic and planned giving. So as you're starting to work on programs, you're going to be looking at ways to find funding, or maybe you're looking at ways that funding has changed in the past few months. You're going to look for other ways to find funding. With a good prospect research system, organizations can get away from being more reactive. That tends to be kind of our cycle that we get into with grants, right? And instead have a steady influx of funds so you can focus on the important work that you're doing. I want to highlight a really important part of this definition, that kind of assessing and qualifying piece. We often think of simply finding a grant as the goal of prospect research, and it's definitely a vital step, but these next two parts are equally or perhaps more important in ensuring that the grant or funder we found is relevant and promising to your organization specifically. So how do we actually do that? This is a digitized version of the 990 form for the Cliff Family Foundation in Instrumentl. As I've mentioned, one of the things you can do in Instrumentl is kind of find this digitized form, Form 990. So it just kind of makes this a little cleaner and easier to read. There's going to be things like contact information for key people. It'll show you those active grant opportunities. And you can also see the other categories of data. Katie hinted at this, so I'm not going to dive too deep here. But one of my favorite sections is this openness to new grantees. Things like key people, you can cross-reference LinkedIn to find potential connections there. There's also visualization of grant amounts. So this information is accessible publicly through Form 990s. So if you're not on Instrumentl, you can still take advantage of these tips. But here you can see how much this organization is giving per award. So for example, if I'm applying for $50,000 of funding for a program, I can see from this snapshot that my chances of getting that amount for one of their grants, it's going to be pretty slim. So this is a funder that's better aligned with organizations maybe seeking smaller amounts of funding. You can also see if the state has been awarded before, if they've been given in your state before. For this example, the Cliff Family Foundation is given in all 50 states, but California seems to be a huge chunk of their funding. So again, just looking at some of those important pieces when we talk about prospecting, you can do all of that on your own through Form 990s. And even some folks I know have been using AI to streamline some of that research. If you input information about a funder, ask it to evaluate based on Form 990 data or information available on their website. These are ways you can really expedite that prospecting process. So we've gone over why grants are so powerful, the high level on just like what is prospect research and maybe some of those key identifiers. I want to turn to actually how we are evaluating funders. And yes, I see there's a question in the chat. You will get a copy of this presentation. I know I'm covering a lot of content, so you might want to reference back. So this is maybe one of our final stages of research, is figuring out if a funder is actually a good fit for your organization. And I'd really like to hear from folks in the chat box, if they don't mind sharing. How do you currently prioritize potential funders? Do you focus on repeat funders? Are you staying local? Who on your team is deciding if you should pursue an opportunity? Love to hear from folks in the chat box. How do you currently prioritize potential funders? Some folks might be looking for things like mission alignment. Others might be, sticking to some of those local foundations. Sarah says when their goals align with our work in housing or fair housing. Yeah, 100%. We want to have goal alignment. Karna says staying local, but have a great need to expand outside of that in order for our organization to grow. Yeah, there's a point at which you might be feeling a little tapped out on some of those local opportunities, right? Melissa says first, retaining consistent funders. Yes, that's going to be kind of the lifeblood of your grants program. And Nora agrees here, repeat funders. It has recently fallen to me to find grantors. I just apply for everything I can find that is relevant. Yeah, Ellie's saying all hands on deck for us, looking for funding as it relates to affordable housing. Yep, I see folks who are our partners and align with mission statement when the need meets grant priority. These are great, great indicators. So I want us to kind of 2x or 3x everything we're saying in the chat and take it to the next level. Let's become experts in funder prospecting. We talk with a lot of grant experts in Instrumentl. It's one of the kind of benefits of our job. And we collaborate with them on webinars and reports and tools to further support all the nonprofits we work with. And so through some of their expertise, we've identified some of their best practices for quickly qualifying the fit of a funder. So we're going to do this by asking 12 questions, both about the opportunity and our own organizations. And this is where, I'm going to help you build a framework for making decisions on grant seeking internally. Should we be spending several weeks preparing to apply for this grant or not? And it'll also help you justify your decision to others, like your board or leadership. I know many of us probably get that email or phone call or text saying, oh, there's a grant out there from the Gates Foundation. Shouldn't we apply? It's so much money. And there's sometimes a reason to say, hold on. Yes, it might be a great opportunity. There's a lot of money on the table, but does it actually align with what we want to be working on right now? And do I have the capacity to support the grant that we're seeking out? So these are going to give you some guiding principles, and I invite you to even screenshot these slides if you want to kind of have quick reference of these questions to build your framework for the future. The first are 4 questions about funder giving history. Number 1, are there at least 3 previously funded organizations similar to yours? So you're going to be looking for those peers, those nonprofits that have been in the funder's history. This one's pretty self-explanatory, but it gives us a great kind of tip and insight on if this funder is going to align with the needs of our organization. The second is about geographic location. Is your organization's geographic location represented historically? For the Cliff Family Foundation example I shared earlier, they have given in all 50 states, but they do seem to be predominantly giving in California. So if you're located in California, you're going to have a leg up there just based on the geographic location of giving. If they are not giving in your state, it's going to be more of an uphill battle. Number 3 is about this percentage of new grantees. So I talked about that being a really interesting stat, how much of the funder is giving towards new grantees versus repeat grantees. We tend to say at Instrumentl, If 30% of a funder's grantees are giving to new organizations, that's a good sign. So anything under that 30% is going to start getting really competitive for new grantees if you're going out for a funder for the first time. And it's going to maybe be a little bit more of an uphill battle. That's going to be your determination whether or not you feel like that's worth the effort. But that 30% marker is a good target to keep an eye on. And building on that, for the last thing, has the funder been giving to more new grantees over time or more to repeat grantees? You can dig a little deeper, right? If they used to give to 60 or give 60% of their awards to new grantees, but more recently they're only giving 30, that makes it a little more complicated. And maybe they're not as compelled by giving to new grantees as they were before. So all things to consider. We're basically putting on our research hats, really diving deep on data here and taking a look at the Form 990s to see what funder giving history looks like. Now, these are questions we want to ask about the specific funding opportunity, the request for proposal, the RFP. It's these that are going to help us decide if we have mission alignment and things like making sure the grant amount is worth our time. So for the first one, we saw this in the chat already. We want to ask what the grant maker's mission is and does it align with ours? Super baseline. Number two, we want to make sure that the specific goals of the grant RFP match our programmatic goals or our organizational goals. And number three, this one often gets, I think, overlooked, unfortunately. Do we just meet their eligibility requirements? Baseline question, something you should be looking at first thing. Number four, what's the size of grants being made? Sometimes, right, you might be looking for $100,000 for programmatic expenses, and you're only finding grants that are for small amounts of money, like that Cliff Family Foundation example I shared, right? That might not be worth your time to be applying for those smaller grants that are just going to puzzle piece together and require a lot of reporting and compliance on. And lastly, what type of grant is this opportunity for? So Katie will show you in Instrumentl how we delineate searches based on the ways the funding is intended to be used. For example, if you're looking for things like general operating expenses, this is a maybe niche area of funding that is often a little bit harder to find funders who will just cover general operating, right? We want to make sure that there's alignment with the need and the explicit information about what the opportunity for this funding is going to be able to be used for. Okay, and our last questions here, also some of the most important, is about our internal capacity. I actually volunteered once for an organization that I know had to return funding from a grant because they ended up not being able to deliver on some of the initial outlined requirements. Oof. So gauging our internal capacity before applying for a grant is critical to setting yourself up for success. The first question here is just plain bandwidth. Are there people here who have the time and ability to work on the application? And going a step further, if we get the funding, do we have the bandwidth to pull this project off? Can we meet the reporting requirements outlined by the funder? And finally, are there clear possibilities to make this an easier lift for your team? The third question here being, do we have aspects of this RFP that we can repurpose past grant proposals from? We just want to make sure that we're not wasting time again on proposals that are not going to be worth our time. And if we can save time there, it's always super duper helpful. So let's get into this piece of how we find those funders, right? We get why they're important. We get the kind of elements we need to be looking for, but how do we actually find them? I'm curious to hear in the chat box again, before I get into this portion, how are you finding prospective new funders? What are tools or practices you've relied on to find prospective funders for grants? For me, my go-to was always finding maybe similar organizations to mine and then scouring their website and impact reports to see who funded them. Some of that kind of peer prospecting, peer research, and then I'd go from there. Curious to hear from you all. Yeah, Sarah says candid email newsletters, foundation directory, candid or GuideStar. Yes, absolutely. That's one we see a lot. How do you find prospective new funders? Are your boards involved in prospecting? Executive directors, leadership? Maybe you're just doing some good old Google searches. That's something I see a lot too. Yeah, Nora says grant watch lists and scouring affiliate websites. Yeah, that's a great tip. Jennifer says, I now wait for invites from foundations. That seems to be the only ones that are really considered. Yeah, that's a tricky spot to be in, right? But when you get those invite only requests, that's a really great spot to be in there. Pedro says the grant writer manager. Okay, great. Melissa says literally everything you've mentioned. We have great connections in the community who also forward opportunities for us. I love that. Great to have word of mouth and kind of ears and eyes on the ground. Maria says attending events that have sponsors and exhibitors and making connections in person. Super, super valuable. I know those things take a lot of time and effort to do, but agree that they are wonderful opportunities for kind of deeper connection to funding. I had some ideas that have come up from kind of other programs like this. You might have done some networking through leadership, done some Googling. You might have some listservs. I saw some newsletters mentioned in the chat box. You might be using funder databases. These are all really good resources. Where can we find this information? Search engines like Google are going to be helpful. I know folks can set up Google alerts. I personally have done that before, where you can kind of ask Google to alert you when a keyword has been mentioned. Maybe there's a particular funder you're trying to keep an eye on, and when they've been mentioned in the news or they have updates, you'll get a Google alert to your inbox. Sifting through 990 forms can provide some inspiration as well. Looking through those funders of organizations that are similar to yours, for sure, these can all lead to new funders. I'm sure folks have had a lot of great experience with that. Katie and I are a little biased today. I'm going to say the easiest way is Instrumentl, though I will say, I used Instrumentl as a nonprofit professional, so I'm speaking from experience. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this program, I want to leave you with a couple of key things. I want you to feel this level up skill in prospecting. I want you to get access to these best options for your organization. And we want you to leave with that tailor-made list of good fit funders. So Katie's going to talk a little bit about how you'll actually set up your first project in Instrumentl and some of the principles there that all align with what I just shared. All these key components of making sure our funding requests, things we're looking to fund, are matching with the best possible funders and funding opportunities. So I'll invite folks to click that link, and I'm actually going to be passing the screen share over to Katie, and she's going to show you how this all works within Instrumentl.
Sarah, I see your question too. How does funder prospecting and Instrumentl differ from what you can find in Candid through their foundation directory? I'll walk through that, as part of the demonstration. I'll kind of point out those differences. One of the biggest differences is that Instrumentl is going to match you with open and active RFPs as its own list. So you're going to see open grants separate from foundation profiles. Candid, they're gonna serve you a big list of foundations, and what I've heard from other folks is the onus is a little bit more on you, right, to qualify those foundations and determine if they have open opportunities or not. So that's going to be one thing that's really different from the get-go. The other piece is you're creating a search from scratch every time with Foundation Directory. When you log in or set up your free trial account, it's going to take you to this project setup form. And Instrumentl is oriented around projects, which are essentially saved searches. So once you set up a search for, hey, we're looking for funding for this specific program or operating funds, Instrumentl is looking for new grant opportunities for you. Our team of grant builders is adding grants to the database, and we'll notify you when we add new grants that are good fits. So it's kind of prospecting for you. You can think about it as a grants assistant in that way. So setting up these saved searches is going to be another big difference between us and Foundation Directory by Candid. Good questions. Feel free to keep them coming. I'm going to start our amazing. Okay. So I'm going to kind of take you through the process. You can follow along with me as if you've gone through and set up your free trial. The first step is going to be setting up your organization profile. So you can pop in your organization's EIN, where you're registered, and then your fiscal year. I'm using an example here, PRG Inc. It's an organization local to Minnesota in the affordable housing space, HUD approved. So an example organization like you guys. The next step is going to be setting up your first project. So I'm going to jump in to this project. Again, you can think about a project as a saved search. So you've got a particular funding priority. You can name this project whatever you'd like. We're not searching based on this project name. And then tell us what you're fundraising for. This leverages AI to pull out keywords from maybe it's a program description that you want to copy and paste or a mission statement. And then just click generate keyword suggestions, and Instrumentl is going to populate some recommendations here based on what you're looking for. So you can choose which of those keywords that you'd like to choose. There are two different types of projects in Instrumentl. One is matches and tracking. That means that we're going to constantly be looking for new grants that match this criteria. The other one is a tracking only project. So if you just want to use a project as, tracking grants that you are currently, that are active, right, that you're managing, you can also have a tracking only project. But after you match with your keywords, Instrumentl is going to take you through setting up or answering questions, right, related to your organization, so we can match you with grants that you're eligible for. So applicant type, this is where, if you're a government entity, select government entity, not nonprofit, right? We're going to show you grants that the funders are open to supporting organizations, if they're a nonprofit or if they're a for-profit or if they're a government entity. A couple other questions here to work through. Do you want to see grants that are specific for faith-based organizations? Where are you serving? So PRG Inc., they serve in the 7-county metro area in Minnesota. So I chose those counties. The more specific you can get with the counties that you're serving, the more specific we can get with our funder recommendations. So some funders, we know this, right? They really focus their funding in those specific regions. When you set up these, the location specific here, that'll allow you to filter your matches to funders who have a specific interest or a focus area in those regions. You can set, what size grants are you looking for? What will you use those funds for? So some folks will set up projects specifically for, general operating expenses, or if they have a capital project, they just want to see grants that are for capital needs. In this case, I'm looking for education funding, project program, training capacity building dollars. And then our database, Instrumentl's database, brings in grants from all different funder sources. So we've got corporate grants, we've got private foundation grants, government grants, and that's that's the bread and butter, right, of the prospecting engine with Instrumentl. Once you've set up a search within Instrumentl, we're gonna pull out 2 different lists for you. So you can see I've got a couple different projects set up. I've got one for my homebuyer programs and advising programs. I've got one for capital projects, so housing construction in the Twin Cities. And I've set up my search, kind of aligned with those particular funding buckets. When you click on a project, you'll see that there's a tracker. So this is where you can save grants and kind of build out your grants calendar right within Instrumentl. But the matches tab is going to be right up there at the top. So these are all the grants and the funders that we've matched you with based on those keywords, based on your location that you're eligible for. You'll see there are 2 boxes up at the top here of matches. So 2 different lists that we're pulling out for you. So this is when we think about using Foundation Directory, one difference is we're going to pull out active opportunities into this first list of opportunity matches. So you can sort this list. I mean, almost 355 grants is a lot to go through. You can sort this list and filter this down. So maybe we want to filter this down by deadline. We want to see what grants are coming up sooner rather than later. Maybe we really want to focus regionally. So I only want to see funders with a match with any of these fields of work, right, related to any of those keywords, but I really want to hone in on these 7 metro county areas. So I'm going to click those. That's going to bring our list down here from 355 down to 50. That's still a lot, right? Maybe I want to focus specifically in on like affordable housing. And that'll bring me down to a more manageable list. So we've got 19 grants, 19 open opportunities that I'm eligible to apply for. They're organized by deadline here. And it's almost like an email inbox, right? You click on a grant opportunity on the right, it's going to show me an overview of that grant. We bring all of the information on these grant pages in from the funder's website. Um, so you can click in to that funder website, but know that all the information here that you're seeing, the application cycle information, the overview of that grant, their funder priorities and eligibility requirements, this is all built using that information from the funder's website. You can see down at the bottom when this page was last reviewed and updated. So that same team of 25 people that's building grants, they're making sure that our database is up to date as well. So we have kind of a robot web crawlers that are monitoring those funder web pages, and they notify us if something changes. And then we have a team of humans that's going to go back and make sure that these are up to date always for you. For every opportunity that is posted by a private foundation, you'll see the second tab, so the Funder 990 report. You can toggle between the grant opportunity, so the funder like grant page. And if this seems like it's aligned, right, we've got affordable, accessible housing here. We look like we're eligible. Maybe you want to start digging into the funder's past giving to make sure that it's a good fit for you based on where they're giving, their average grant size. Is this worth your time? So you can dig into kind of what Rachel referenced before. We do link the 990s, but we pull out the key analytics around those 990s too. So funder insights, you can see who are key people associated with this funder. What is the average grant size? This one doesn't have as much information. Let me pull up, I know the Schultz Family Foundation. When I was a major gift officer with the Salvation Army, they were a big funder of ours. But if we wanted to take a look at some insights into their past giving, we're going to pull out their median grant size, their average grant size. So you know when you are going to apply for this funder to increase your chances of winning those grants, where should we anchor our ask amount? We can dig into past grantees. So the darker the purple, the more concentrated the number of grants in this area. You can filter this list down if you want to see, okay, what organizations in Minnesota do they have a history of giving to? And for what purpose? So you can see based on what this funder has reported on the 990, is there alignment, essentially based on what they're giving to this organization and to where our mission is and our programs. How open they are to new grantees, what do new grantees get versus repeat grantees. You can see the average here really rises as you build those relationships with the Schultz Family Foundation. And then what types of organizations do they prioritize? So really in-depth details here to help you qualify a funder or disqualify them. If it feels like a good fit, the workflow to build out your grants pipeline within Instrumentl, we make it really easy to just click save. So you click this big red save button down at the bottom. When you click save, it's going to move that grant from your matches tab over to your tracker. And then we'll organize your grants pipeline automatically by the deadline. And you can start to move the grant through the different stages. The other list that I'll point out here is funder matches. So the first list, again, these are open and active grants. The second list is funder matches. This might be a little bit more familiar to what you'd receive on a foundation directory. So this is a list of foundations that doesn't have an open grant right now that is aligned with the search criteria you set up, but they do have a history of giving to the fields of work and in your area. So still good prospects for you, but not necessarily one where you can just apply to an application that's posted on their website. This is also where all of your invitation-only funders will live. You can actually filter out invite-only funders if you only want to focus on funders who are open to starting relationships. Usually that'll cut this list in about half. And then all of these funders, right, have those funder profiles. You can see any application information that they have. Sometimes there's more specific information here around like, this is who you contact, here's their email, or here's their address to submit a letter of inquiry. This is also where you'll see if they're an invitation-only funder, it will be notated there. The other piece here, so this is a lot of funders to go through. You can filter or sort this list based on some of those 990 insights. So maybe you want to see, okay, of all of these 532 matches, who has a really high giving rate to new grantees? I want to focus on funders who are open to giving to organizations they've never supported before. So you can sort by some of these, or maybe it's the largest grant amount. You want to focus on those folks first. You can save a funder just like you would a grant. So if this is a funder, you want to get on your radar and start to work towards submitting an application or building a relationship. You can add those funders to your tracker as well. The last piece of prospecting that I want to touch on is peer prospecting. So you might have noticed this filter up at the top, gives to peers. You can filter, you can build a peer list and filter your matches to only include grants from funders who have given to your peers. So if you click on the peers list here, it's going to be right under the projects. You can actually build out a list of peer organizations and see who their funders are, see who they have longstanding relationships with, and use that as a kind of a backdoor to build a new list of prospects where you know that these are funders who have a history of giving to similar organizations. So you could build a list of 5 or 10 peers. I have this one project for Pride and Living as an example. And you're going to see up at the top, it's going to give me kind of a snapshot view or comparison based on 990 information here. And then funding history. So this is kind of the juicy information. We organize this by those who have given the largest or the highest number of grants to this organization. So typically you'll see, right, those these are funders who have longstanding relationships with an organization. And you can see, what has this funding looked like year over year? How has the relationship grown over time? If they have a specific purpose here, how much do they typically give this organization? And you can interact with this data a little bit as well. So you can sort this by average grant if you want to see who's giving them the largest grants or when they were last granted by these organizations. And then once you build out this list of peers, if we jump back into our matches tab, you can apply that filter to see if I only want to include funders who have given to my peers. So I'm going to open this up just to see what we got. We're going to only include grants from funders who have given to your peers. So there are 35 open grant opportunities here, and they have all of these funders have given to that peer that I selected, Project for Pride and Living. So it's a great way to quickly qualify a list of funders who have an open grant. You can also do a quick find of any funder, any grant opportunity, or another organization in the top left here. So if you wanted to quick find a foundation or a grant opportunity that you've heard about, maybe a lot of you said you get listservs, or maybe you get emailed about a grant opportunity. You can look them up with our quick find in the top left. I haven't looked at the Q&A, so I kind of want to.
I was just going to jump in and help you moderate some questions, Katie. Is that okay?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Okay. So this first one's from Melissa. She asked if we can elaborate on how state funding is listed in Instrumentl. She's curious about how comprehensive state funding opportunities are.
Yeah, great question. So that's one of when we're setting up a project, that's one of these kind of funder types that you can filter or include in your matches. So we have a federal government filter here, as well as state and local government. So when you select that filter, it's going to show you like in this case, it's Minnesota specific state opportunities. We are 100% comprehensive when it comes to federal grant opportunities. We're very comprehensive when it comes to state as well, but it's not 100%. What I'll say is if you ever find a state opportunity and it's not in Instrumentl, our team is very quick. It's usually within the day. We're happy to add those to our database so you can save them. But you can also, if you find an opportunity outside of Instrumentl, you can add that to your tracker right on your tracker. So if you're finding an opportunity outside, you can add it. It's going to prompt you to look up a funder. So if I'm going to look up Richard M. Schultz as an example here, if it exists, if they exist as a funder, right, within Instrumentl, it'll populate here, or you can create your own funder right within the tool.
Thanks, Katie. And then one other question that came up from Sarah: can we export lists of funders or opportunities directly from Instrumentl?
You can. So that's as a subscriber, you have that ability to export. So your matches tab is just going to be kind of your workspace to find grants, save them to your tracker. And once you've saved a list, maybe you've got, in this case, we've got 4 grants that we've saved. The goal with Instrumentl is really that you can track and manage everything within the tool. We'll send you automated reminders once you save grants to your tracker about those deadlines. You can use it for task management, so to-dos related to grants, or if you're collaborating with other users or other team members, right, on grant applications. But if you wanted to export, let's say you're using Instrumentl to track your grants, you're moving it through these different stages of the grant life cycle, and you want to export essentially like a pipeline report, right? Of these are all the grants that I've identified that I'm working on. You do have a lot of reporting exportability within Instrumentl. So you can export a PDF or a CSV file. The PDF is really nice. Leadership teams love this, and board members to see, okay, for one of our projects or across all the projects that we're raising funds for, what are the grants that we have planned or in the pipeline? And we're going to automatically populate a dashboard for you, and then just kind of a big picture view, right, of grant opportunities, the status of those grants, how much we're asking for. You can also export a CSV into an Excel document. So if you want to kind of manipulate your pipeline there. But Instrumentl is designed so that you can actually do all of that within the tool.
Awesome. Another question that came up is there an annual contract, or is this a month-to-month agreement after the trial has ended?
Yeah, so for standard and pro plans, it is an annual commitment, but you have the option to be billed upfront or billed monthly. So for NHRC members, you have I'll let you know you have like a 15% off discount within the next 6 weeks if you are a member and you would like to sign up. That would apply whether you want to pay upfront or monthly, but it is an annual contract, so 12 months, and then you have the option to cancel at that point.
Awesome. I'm not seeing any other questions in the Q&A box at this point in time, but you can pause for a moment and let folks simmer on some of the information you shared. Is there anything more you wanted to show in product, Katie, before we kind of wrap up with some of our final slides?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we just kind of touched on prospecting here, so I'll just briefly walk through grant tracking and management within Instrumentl, and then a sneak peek of our AI grant writing tool, and then we can segue over to a couple final slides and questions as well. So we talked about our matches tab here. As you're saving grants to your tracker, it's going to build out your grants calendar, or your tracker right within the app. You can set a goal for each of these kind of program funding bucket areas and track your progress then towards those goals right within Instrumentl. I'm going to jump to our all projects view here. So you can see across all of our projects or workspaces, right, that we've set up, those saved searches and grants that we've saved across each of those grants, each of those projects. We've got 9 grants, right, that we're saving, that we're going after. We've got notes related to those grant opportunities. They're in different statuses. For every grant opportunity, when you click on the grant, it's going to show you that grant page we were looking at on the match, so the funding opportunity page. And then we've got a series of tabs here to help us track and manage our progress on this on the grant application. So we move grants from that researching stage, when we just identify them as a potential prospect, through the different stages of the grant life cycle. So supporting end-to-end grant management. If you've got a team, right, that's working on grants, you can assign ownership, who's owning this grant, and then track your progress through the application process. As you move a grant through those different stages, Instrumentl has some automations kind of built in. So if we plan to apply for this grant, it's going to prompt you, which application cycle do we want to apply for? It's going to ask you to set a submission goal for the letter of inquiry, for the full proposal. How much do we want to ask for? And you can toggle really easily. It's all within the same view here of the grant and then that funder profile. So if you're thinking, okay, how much do I want to ask for? You can quickly jump back into that funder profile and see, okay, what on average do they give, or what's the median grant size? What are they giving to other organizations like me? So you can kind of keep track of all this information in one place. task management, so assigning tasks for yourself or for team members if you need input from other folks as you're drafting applications. You can assign tasks. Those tasks, similar to our deadline reminders, will send you reminders about tasks and deadlines on a cadence through your emails. So you'll see here there's a email reminder 2 weeks before, 1 week before, 2 days before. So you can track and manage all your grants in one space. You can store all of your documents related to this grant in one place as well. So document storage, you can either upload a PDF or share a link. The last piece that I'll call out here, just as one of our newest features that I kind of teased before, is our AI grant writing assistant. So it's called Apply. What Apply does is it brings in all private grant application questions to Instrumentl, so you can actually start to draft your proposal within the tool. So I'm going to share my screen here for this little video. And we're gonna show you. So I'm just moving my Zoom. The first step of leveraging the AI grant writing tool is actually uploading past proposals into Instrumentl. So these are all past proposals that we've submitted. We feel really good about the language. They won us big funding. And we want to leverage how we answered our questions on these proposals for future applications. So a lot of organizations have, some kind of answer library, or they're looking at past proposals when they're drafting their applications. Within Instrumentl, you can upload those past proposals and use those then as source material for your future grants. So we're going to look at this example with the Old National Bank Foundation. We've identified this grant as an opportunity we want to apply for. Up at the top, you'll see this button here to continue the application. And this is going to bring in all those questions from the funder's website right into Instrumentl for you to draft your application. You can choose which of the proposals you've uploaded to Instrumentl that you want to serve as source material. So maybe it's for a really specific program. You can choose which grants you want us to pull from, and we will improve our recommendations based on those proposals. When you select a question then, so like mission statement or what are your organization's major strategies, you can see on the right, it's pulling in a recommended response. And this is, you'll see AI generated, you'll see word for word how you responded to this question, and we'll show you where we're getting that information. All of the documents that you upload to Instrumentl are stored securely on your account. So no other, it's locked down for you. I know that's always a question mark for folks, but we're only pulling from your past proposals to provide these responses for you. We'll also notify you if you're over the word count. I know that can always be a bear. If you've got the perfect response and you're 10 words over or 10 characters over, we'll notify you if you exceed that word count. You can meet that word count instantly within Instrumentl. So what we're doing here is we're helping you draft the proposal quickly, kind of automating what's typically a very manual process of kind of reviewing how you've answered similar questions on previous proposals. And then when you've got your draft completed, you're going to download this and submit it as you normally would on the funder's website. So every funder has their own process for receiving those applications. And in the current state of the AI grant writer, it's going to help you draft those proposals. You can download it, and then you can add it back into your document library to use for future grant proposals as well, and submit that application as you normally would. We have an ongoing discount starting June 1st. So as part of this initial offer, we're giving you 15% off. If it's something that doesn't work out now, but maybe in 6 months, you're like, okay, now I'm ready. I'm ready to give it a try for a year. All NHRC members will have 10% off your first year of Instrumentl's Pro Plan moving forward. So we're excited to offer that as well. The free trial is the Pro Plan, so you have access to peer prospecting. The one feature that you don't have is the AI grant writing tool. That's something that just requires a little bit more onboarding to make sure that you're set up for success. So with the Pro Plan, you are assigned a dedicated customer success manager who leads you through onboarding, and they will help you get set up with that AI grant writing tool.
I wanted to highlight, and thank you, Katie. That's awesome information. And I think we've hit a lot of questions in the chat. So if folks are still confused about anything, feel free to add any thoughts back in there. Pedro had asked a really great question. And what they were inquiring about is, what is your success rate on average for 2024? Meaning, what percentage of applications that folks using Instrumentl submitted were funded? I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I did want to share just some quick impact. We did an impact study last year, and just to give you some kind of stats on what folks are seeing with using Instrumentl, the folks that participated in our impact survey said that they had and as a median increase, they had over 1.1 million in a median increase in annual revenue within the last 12 months of using Instrumentl. They also found that they were submitting grants or prospecting 75% faster. So almost 4 times the more relevant grants were being found on a regular basis. They also replaced, on average, 2 different tools that they were using for grant management or other capacities. Katie kind of highlighted how this is a full life cycle management system. So you might be able to consolidate some of your tools there. And 9 out of 10 folks told us that they improved their grant collaboration. A lot of the features are intended to bring your grants teams together in one place, building that home base that Katie was talking about. So those are some stats I have about that, but I'm really interested in the success rate one. So Pedro, I'll have to get back to you and I'll share if I find some insights there. I'll send that along to Ellie and Ebony so you can follow up in emails about that. Thanks, folks. I know some people have to drop. I want to make sure, because I said I would be allowing you all to enter into a raffle today, and I want to honor that. If you haven't already, please share your feedback. This is going to be the way you're going to get one of our freebies. This is the ultimate 5-step grants calendar planning guide, and you'll also be automatically entered into the raffle. I'll be following up with the folks at NHRC to announce the winner there. But yeah, please, we'd love to hear from you and learn about what you benefited from in this experience. The one other plug I'll do before I'll pass it back to Katie / Ellie, whoever needs to jump in next, is that we do have other events. If this was compelling to you and you were like, hey, I want to learn more about grant seeking, or you're already an expert and maybe you want to level up in some skill sets, we'd love to see you at our upcoming programs. So glad to hear it, Tanya. Next week, we have a grant masterclass on how to fund your faith-based mission, if we have any faith-based organizations in the room today. And then we also have a really cool one on AI and how grant writers are currently using AI, best practices there. That's going to be with Meredith Noble of Learn Grant Writing. So I'd love to see you for those. Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you both so much. This was really great information. And I'll just say at NHRC, we've used Instrumentl, and have tried other platforms. And we found Instrumentl to be the most user-friendly and the most helpful in kind of really making it easy to find all the information that you need to find for a funder. So that's what I'll say about that. And I'm going to hand it back over to Bruce to wrap us up.
Excellent. So definitely plan on joining. Thanks both to all the presenters, and thanks for the participants. Good set of questions and feedback in the chat. So just a quick reminder, next week is the MISMO presentation. So that's the data standards for housing counseling. It may sound dry, but this is going to change our lives. And David Young and his team have really done a great job on making this work. Freddie Mac has been very, very helpful in funding the effort. It's part of a 7 or 8 year process to really align housing counseling with the same digital standards and language that Fannie and Freddie and the lenders and the assessors and the real estate, all of them use it. And this will allow us to much more effectively communicate and share data. I just can't recommend this enough. We got a lot of heavy hitters from the industry coming in to talk about this. Hopefully we'll have HUD as well as Freddie Mac, but we'll have others as well from the MISMO program. It's actually was started by the MBA, or is housed in the MBA, but it's really an industry-wide effort, and it brings housing counseling into that effort as well. So pretty interesting. It will impact the abilities of you to do your work and not have to rekey information in, and will allow for much greater relationships with lenders over time that will be able to share data and hopefully, once the security issues are aligned, to be able to share cases and streamline our business, reduce costs in delivering, and make it more valuable for housing counseling agencies to participate with lenders in helping people buy houses. So big deal there. There's quite a few more that's coming up, and Ellie did a good coverage of this. I would just say that you want to pointing out that this the intersection of housing and health, very interesting idea that housing counselors can do parallel work with that might get paid by Medicaid. It's um, it's a really good opportunity, and we'll have a counseling agency that's had a lot of success at doing it. We'll get Lot Diaz to lead a conversation about fee for service with lenders, and as you probably know, he has led a lot of work on doing the kind of plowing the field in getting lenders to pay for the housing counseling services as they're delivered, and also in getting cases that were declined back to counseling agencies so that we could correct whatever's going on with people and get them back into the mortgage process. This is really good work, and I think we will have kind of a model that might be replicable by other organizations that'll be helpful. The income from mortgage transactions, talking with Gabe Del Rio. I presented on this a few years ago. I know several groups really adopted this, and essentially his view, and I think pretty accurate, is that in the transaction, everybody makes money except for the housing counselor, and slicing and dicing some of the activities and having housing counselors do them, especially things that you're really already doing, is a pretty vital part to all this. They have developed some very lucrative models. This is the kind of thing that you do that allows you to be independent of the funding streams that are government funding streams, if you have volume in the purchase process. And then the latest, there's a lot going on with student loans. Unfortunately, there's been some serious retrenchment, so we want Savvy to report in. And then we are always looking for more innovative projects that we can highlight that are replicable by other organizations that bring in new kinds of money. Whether it's fundraising, whether it's business opportunities, whether it's running a nonprofit housing real estate firm. I mean, the range of things. So if you're doing that out there, we'd love to be able to feature your program and get it to have a wider recognition. And I think this is the kind of thing that also funders are interested in as well. So this may be helpful to you all. So with that note, I just on the other side of this, which is wanting to encourage people to be to organizations to become members of NHRC. We've had a strong beginning of the year, but there's plenty of groups that haven't joined us quite yet, and now's the time to get in. The good news is that we have some very deep discounts that we can provide, especially on the credit reporting field, where we can substantially save money on people's budgets. If you have some volume, we are really pleased that this is clearly a successful part of the program, but we have language translation discounts, and we have other functions that would be worth your while. The membership dues, as you probably know, are really tied to the size of your organizational budget, but this is what keeps us alive and keeps us independent, and we are having to rely more on membership dues as a bigger part of our budget in the future. So with that note, thanks everybody for joining us.